4th July, 1990. England faced West Germany in a World Cup semi-final. Do you remember the score? Probably not. It's been nearly 40 years, right? Do you remember who missed the penalty in that match? Maybe. But there is one thing England will never forget. A young man standing in the middle of the pitch, trying not to cry, and failing. Because in that moment, it wasn't just a football match anymore. It was a broken dream and a nation feeling it at the exact same time. There are moments in football where people don't need to remember the score, don't need to remember who scored, yet still remember exactly how it felt when it happened. For England, the summer of 1990 is one of those memories. It is often said that at around 10 p.m. on July 4th, 1990, England changed forever. Not because of a victory, not because of a trophy, but because of a single image. A young man standing on the pitch in Turin, eyes red, lips trembling, trying to hold it in, and then breaking down in tears. That man was Paul Gascoigne, a naturally gifted talent, a deeply emotional human being. And in that moment, he wasn't just crying for himself. He was crying for an entire dream collapsing before his eyes. But to understand why a single tear could carry so much weight, we have to go back to England in 1990. This was not a country filled with pride or optimism. Just months before the World Cup, hundreds of thousands of people had taken to the streets to protest the poll tax. And those protests quickly turned into riots, with chaotic scenes unfolding in the heart of London. Not long after, Strangeways Prison in Manchester descended into a riot that lasted nearly a month, one of the longest prison uprisings in British history. The atmosphere across the country was heavy, divided, and unstable. People were losing faith in many things, and football, something that was supposed to bring joy, was not immune to that. Throughout the 1980s, English football had been associated with hooligan violence and tragedies that turned much of Europe against it. Going to a football match was not a source of pride. Sometimes, it even carried a sense of embarrassment. The English flag was not displayed everywhere, as it is today. It still carried sensitive, even negative meanings. There were no streets filled with fans draped in flags, no city squares packed with supporters celebrating together. There was only a distance, a disconnect between the national team and the people, as if they no longer truly belonged to each other. That was the backdrop when Italia '90 began. England's opening match was a dull 1-1 draw with Ireland. A lifeless performance, lacking emotion. In small pubs across the country, only a handful of people gathered to watch. The atmosphere was cold. There were no cheers, no excitement. No one believed this team would achieve anything special. It felt like another tournament that would quietly pass by, ending in disappointment, then fading into memory. But then, something began to change. Slowly, subtly, but enough to create a ripple effect. In the match against the Netherlands, Paul Gascoigne gave England something they hadn't felt in a long time: joy. He played without fear, free from tactical constraints, free from pressure. His movements were instinctive, creative, daring. He dribbled, turned, passed in ways that felt natural and expressive, like an artist on the pitch. He wasn't the kind of English player people were used to seeing, and that's exactly what made him special. People began to notice, then they began to enjoy it. And gradually, they started to believe that this team could offer something different. Football suddenly became worth watching again, not just because of results, but because of emotion. In one pub, when a goal was disallowed, a fan took off his shoe, ran forward, and smashed it against the television, as if venting his anger at the referee. It may sound strange, but it revealed something important. People were starting to care again. They felt connected. They felt involved. They felt like they were part of it. Then came the knockout match against Belgium. A tense game that stretched into extra time on a summer evening. On a boat along the River Thames, a group of students who had just finished their exams gathered to celebrate. A small television became the center of attention. At first, only a few watched, but as the match went on, more and more people gathered around. No one told them to. It just happened. And when David Platt scored the winning goal, everything exploded. People screamed, hugged each other, jumped, laughed. Some even got injured in the chaos of celebration. It may have looked wild, but it was a different kind of chaos. A release. When England defeated Cameroon in the quarterfinal, that emotion was no longer confined to pubs or small spaces. It spilled out into the streets. Thousands of people poured outside. Traffic came to a standstill. Cars were abandoned in the middle of the road as people ran into crowds, singing, dancing, hugging strangers. There were no barriers between people anymore, no individuals, only a collective sharing the same emotion. The scene resembled a kind of religious ritual, people united in something bigger than themselves. And the most remarkable thing was this. There was no violence, not hooliganism, not destruction, but a strange kind of freedom. A freedom that came from within, from the feeling of connection, of belonging. And then came the semi-final against West Germany. A stronger team, more disciplined, more experienced. But England did not look inferior. They matched them. At times, they even dominated. When Gary Lineker scored the equalizer to make it 1-1, the dream was still alive. People began to believe. Maybe something extraordinary could happen. But then, in extra time, the defining moment arrived. Gascoigne went into a challenge. The referee reached into his pocket. A yellow card. Just a yellow card. But for Gascoigne, it meant everything. He knew that if England reached the final, he would not be able to play. The dream he had carried since childhood ended in that instant. Everything around him seemed to fade. The noise, the crowd, the match, all of it disappeared. There was only the referee, the yellow card, and a truth he could not change. He looked up at the stands, looked at his teammates, and then he couldn't hold it in anymore. The tears came, not controlled, not calculated, just pure, raw emotion. Gary Lineker was the first to notice. He signaled toward the bench. Manager Bobby Robson understood immediately. He knew that for Gascoigne, the final was already gone. And it was not just a personal loss. It was a tragedy for the entire team. Gascoigne kept playing, but he was no longer himself. He ran, he fought, but his mind was somewhere else. In the end, the match was decided by penalties, and as history records, England lost. But strangely, people do not remember that defeat in the usual way. They do not only remember the missed penalties, they remember the feeling of that entire summer. They remember the streets filled with people, the sleepless nights, the embraces between strangers. They remember the first time in years they truly loved their national team again. And at the center of it all was a young man crying on the pitch. Years later, Gascoigne said it was the most beautiful period of his career. He didn't want it to end. He truly believed they could win it all. But football does not always give you the ending you want. Sometimes it only leaves you with a moment, a feeling, a memory. And for England, the summer of 1990 is not a story about a trophy. It is a story about a tear not of weakness, but of love, of passion, of a dream cut short. And perhaps that is why it has become immortal.